of a deity. You know, it sort of, you know, gradually started with, you know, one cell beings that just came out of it. That's improbable order enough. But, you know, then it develops into a bigger being, and then it forms eyes, you know, and then it develops into all these things. But, you know, like Gerhard Dorn says, it's more important to know what you are rather than who you are. Well, what are we? What do we belong to the animal kingdom? You know, and so part of our individuation is to remember that we're an animal, you know, and that's one thing we seem to have forgotten, you know. And I just wanted to show this was something I really enjoyed. Let's see, just cancel that in a second. This comes from, and by the way, on March 4th, one of these volumes is going to be coming out. But it was Jung's lectures at the ETH, or the ETH. But this was one thing he quoted: "A pagan heart, a Christian soul had he. He followed Christ, yet for dead Pan he sighed."
You have to send that out, Craig. I'm going to have a photograph of that made up, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, that is just awesome.
Doesn't that move you? I mean, it really moves me when I read that.
And you know, and Pan, and then, you know, the other character there is like, well, who is that other character?
Well, that other character playing the pipe is a famous mythical character. I can't remember his name.
Okay.
But he is a very famous figure in myth. But you can tell who he is by the fact that he's got the pipe. Just darn it.
The dog's trying to tell you it has a pagan heart.
Yes. Well, I got two dogs, and anyway, one wants to sit next to me, and the other one here just. Anyway, well, hopefully they won't bark too much. Okay, well, let's get started. But I do want to say other thing is that you know, so I've been experiencing this in my own active imaginations, you know, and one of them was just a second. You guys mind? Just take a second here. I'm going to get these dogs out of here. If you don't mind, it'll be a little better. I think for my own concentration. Just a second. Come on, Andy. Let's go. Yeah. Okay, well, I don't know if that's going to stop it, but at least they won't be in here in the room with me, you know. But I had a, you know, I've been having these, you know, in my active imaginations. I mean, this was one of them, you know, was this, you know, I just see this woman with golden horns jumping over a tree, or I mean a rock, you know, and I just feel, you know, when I'm asking these beings, you know, I'm going down usually the same thing I always do, and I'm sort of doubting. I just feel doubt, and I want to eliminate it. You know, I tell these beings, I am on this side. I'm not on the side of this one who is saying no, 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 you know. And then I ask him, hi, Tim. We're just talking about the animal nature of this lecture. It's really close to where she connects with the animal side of herself, you know, and that's really what the Indian represents, you know. And I just, this comes from a lecture that Jung did at ETH, you know, a pagan heart, a Christian soul had he. He followed Christ, yet for dead Pan he sighed, you know. And you know, when I read that the first time I read it, And I'm feeling it right now. Every cell in my body was singing, you know. So there's this aspect of what we're really doing is we're, you know, like I said, Gerhard Dorn says it's more important to know what you are rather than who you are. What we are animals with this ego consciousness. And relating to our animal nature is one of the first tasks here, to realize we're an animal. But anyway, we'll just go through these images. I think Jan might be here in a couple seconds, but anyway, we'll just get started. How you doing, Tim? You warming up?
Yes, it's good. Warming up a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad Gary's here. He didn't think he could be here. But anyway, we're going to just kind of take off from the vision we were at last time. And this one is so full of revelation. I just hope we do a good job on it. But so here comes this white bird, and it changes into a black hawk, and it picks up this egg from the earth. And when it reaches the sky, it's the white bird again. So now there's two things happening here, and the germ of wheat and the egg. One and the same bird took on the dark form in order to seize the germ of life, and then it becomes more white as it goes up. And this egg symbolizes the beginning. We don't know what or what will come out of it. Now, this is her vision, you know. And I think one thing you have to remember, to get visions like this, what do you have to do? I mean, it takes a lot of what Peter Kingsley called lying down in dark places. You know, remember that when we're doing this. This was a lot of work on her part to come to this this state of having a vision like that. But in her vision, she's seeing a white bird that changes into a black hawk, picks up an egg, flies up into the air, and turns white again. And what does this mean? It's the dark form seizes the germ of life, and then it flies up into the air. And this symbolizes a beginning. We don't know what the beginning is or what will come out of the egg. Now, there's three visions here of just anticipations. You know, they just are just anticipations. You know, if you ever get into an analysis, sometimes you have a great dream that has nothing to do with where you are in your individuation, but it is showing you an anticipation. I think one of those was like Jung's Liverpool dream, where he's, you know, he goes to this dark, sooty city, Liverpool, you know, and he sees in the middle of the lake, it's just so smoggy there. You know, I think they've got rid of a lot of that smog marina, but it used to be a bad situation because, you know, they used everyone, you know, fueled their furnaces with real coal. You know, they didn't do it with natural gas or anything. So anyway, he's a real sooty city, but he sees in the middle of the lake an island with a tree on it with sun coming down. And his companions who are with him say, you know, there's another person here that comes from Basel, Switzerland. And he lives very near this place right here. And then Jung thinks to himself in the dream, I know very well why he's settled here. You know, now that was kind of an anticipation dream, but these first three visions in this lecture are anticipation dreams. So the next vision is a bird flies to the woman in blue who is sitting like an ancient statue. And we'll show her real quick here. Let's see, here she is. Okay. All right. Oop, Dawn's here. All right. Okay, and the bird settles, flies to the woman in blue, sitting like an ancient statue, settles down on her hands. And The woman holds a grain of wheat, which the bird takes in its beak and then flies up in the sky. And the woman dressed in blue is this peculiar mixture of a Christian celestial mother, but the accent of wheat is more related to Demeter and to Isis. You know, the host must consist of wheat, and so it has a connection with Christ, as well as Iacchus and Osiris, who really was resurrected wheat. And the scene of the white bird coming down upon the mother is an unmistakable parallel to the Immaculate Conception, since the Holy Ghost is depicted as a dove. The bird brings the seed of life, the divine germ, down to the mother. And so the seed corresponds to the egg, which is also the germ of life. The egg reappears here, but transformed. So that grain of wheat is the egg, also the egg. And in the hand of the mother refers to the fertility of the earth. The egg as the well as the grain symbolize the self that is yet to be born. Now, this is her first vision, and again, it's an anticipation vision. And hi, Dawn. We're just getting started. And so what does the figure of the mother mean? Psychologically, she means the collective unconscious under its maternal aspect. Now, here he's going to say a little bit about the mother aspect in Christiana Morgan, not necessarily for everybody, but for her, she was the history of the blood. For in her case, the mother did not refer to anything spiritual. Properly speaking, her mother referred to the womb and to the clan and to the earth. And so her mother is the blood. And through the picture of this immaculate conception, the germ of life has been deposited in the stream of her mother's blood. So thus it's been inserted into the sphere of instincts, and thereby it's something like a pregnancy begins, in which the patient is her own child. And this is the mystical child, another symbol of the self. So the mystical child is another symbol of self. The mother holds the grain of wheat, which is exactly like Iacchus in the Eleusinian mysteries. It's not only a grain of wheat, but a whole ear of wheat, which the priest shows at midnight in a ceremony, which is exactly the same idea as Christmas Eve. The idea is the same. The ear of wheat represents the son born of the great mother of the earth. So it's just a very beautiful. Now, these are her visions, you know, and it's just, she did not have a real idea what these all meant, you know, but, there's Angel and Carlos, okay. Just getting going here. Oh, and yeah, Carlos is coming. Okay. So I'm just waiting for Carlos. But anyway, very interesting anticipatory visions. Now they're going to get a little better, you know, at very quickly, she's going to come in herself personally. So this is an anticipation. Hi, Carlos and Angel. Just getting started. We haven't done, this is really the first vision, the anticipation visions of the egg and the germ of wheat, which symbolize herself, which is yet to be born. And really, the mother represents the blood. So the spirit comes and puts the seed in the blood of the mother. And this is, the patient becomes her own child. This is the mystical child, which is a symbol of the self. And it kind of represents the same thing that happens on Christmas Eve. So this is an anticipation. The mother is the anticipated result of the birth to come. The bird takes the grain, flies up in the air with it, and we don't know where. Now, he says these are very typical, the beginning of visions. It begins as if the whole world has to be built anew, or as if nothing has ever happened. And then it carries the thought through until it reaches the stage that is of the not yet and the never has been, and reaches the future. But it always starts with like the world has to come into being. So these three visions, really beautiful visions of the seed and the birth coming, is the world coming into being in her. You know, now she starts to get back to the Indian, and we're going to find out a lot about who the Indian is here, because he's a very interesting character. I mean, it's just absolutely astonishing who the Indian is as we get in here. I beheld a horse which changed into a ram and then into a bull. So it's again starting with the at the beginning and going into more differentiation. The horse is the most conscious to her, symbolizes the animal libido in her, associated with the man, but that changes into the ram, and we remember that's the spring symbol. And then it changes into the bull. So it went from Aries to Taurus. The bull is the next sign, is the more full. It's a fuller fertility, a greater generative force. You know, now all of these visions are going to be about her becoming more related to her animal side. And, you know, I had a session with Charles about some dreams he had. And this was kind of just with me and Charles. But he had some very strange dreams about the generative organs, you know, and it was just very interesting that the masculine and the feminine were represented as the lingam and the yoni in his dreams, which again was getting away from the abstractness and bringing us down to earth. You know, the generative organs are, we are animals first. We're not, we're animals who want to have a deity incarnate in us, but we can never forget that we are blood, bones, and cells, you know. And I showed this picture before. Hi, Jordy. Just getting started here. Jordy, you're still going to do a presentation like at about 11? Well, you just start, or whatever. It's the, I don't know what time it is in Spain. Right now, right here, it's 10:10. So just after, a little bit after that, we'll just turn it over to you. I'm glad to see Gary here. He was thinking he was going to go to Colorado Springs, I think, and he didn't. But anyway, this is kind of the theme of this whole lecture here. That a pagan heart, a Christian soul had he followed Christ, yet for dead Pan he sighed. I think you're going to find every single one of her visions follow this pattern, you know, that this very sort of she's a thinking type. She's a Christian, you know. I mean, Jung said, I forgot to show this last time, but this is what he said in the vision last time, which is very important. And we also got to remember this too, you know, that Christianity is a very profound teaching. It's this gigantic attempt to master the secrets of the soul. And it really is. You know, think of every one of the mythical scenes, the Annunciation, you know, the birth of light on the winter solstice, you know, the baptism by John, going into the unconscious, the miracles of the wheat, the crucifixion, and everything is It's just, it is, and you know, these are all unconscious events. They happened, but they happened in the unconscious, and they somehow became formed into this wonderful vision of the, like we looked at the Kundalini, which was this X-ray of the psyche. That's sort of the European X-ray of the psyche, the Europe and the Levant. Of course, it really didn't include the Germanic and the Celtic and the people who, you know, still worship oak trees. You know, and you go to Norway, my dad says, nobody here goes to church. You know what they do? They go out and hike, you know, in nature. But anyway, now the Indian is there. You see a horse that becomes a ram and becomes a bull. So it's a spring symbolism, and it goes from the ram to the more generative quality of the bull, which he calls a fuller fertility. You know. Now this, then he saw the Indian was upon the back of the bull and holding him by the horns. So this is the first time whenever we've seen the Indian connected with the bull, and this means that the animus in Christiana is being renewed by the spring symbol, and then the Indian was leading the bull, which followed very quietly. They slowly ascended a high hill until at last they stood upon the pinnacle of a rock. And below, many people surrounded the rock and raised their hands as if in supplication. Now, Jung is going to give you a wonderful amplification of this image, because it is really just crazy good. You know, I mean, here is the drawing or the painting. You know, the animus takes the symbol of renewal, the bull, up to a pinnacle of rock, and all the hands below are raised in supplication. Okay, whose hands are those? Jung says they're the entire collective unconscious in Christiana, Morgan. They see the redeemers have moved to the top of Mount Sinai. And also the hands that are raised in supplication are her. They're her seeing that this is the redeeming force. This very primordial man, and we're going to see later how important he is versus Christ, because there's going to be a choice in her to follow you know, in his head he was followed Christ, but in his heart for Pan he sighed. We're going to find out that's exactly what happens to her. But then, this it is you know, sort of, this is almost a spring festival, is what Jung is saying. Is it's the resuscitated libido is expressed by the bull is a very primitive idea. What him going to the pinnacle of the rock is sort of like carnival. You know, it's the shaking off of the past year, spring festival, to renew the medicine power or of the manna, the health power for the coming year. And therefore such ceremonials are still celebrated in spring to make people sound or strong for the year ahead. So this is what's happening in her, but it's a spring festival. And the idea in the Dionysian festivals is that involve phallic symbols. They are evidence, symbolize the renewed forces of nature. The renewed force here has a spiritual value, and leads the animus to a high pinnacle of rock where this remarkable scene ensues. You know, and of course, this is not based on any external experiences. Remember, every single one of these visions happened from her lying down in a dark place and just meditating. But the figures in the scene correspond to the facts in her unconscious. The bull, the Indian, the crowd that watches, and the performance all happened in her unconscious. And and she finds that in her unconscious there is one leader, the animus, and there is one power, and that's the renewed spring libido. So this is an important fact for the unconscious. There's a tremendous desire in the unconscious and in her to be led with the hope of renewal. And so for what they expect of the bull and the Indian is rebirth, the spring miracle. And it's interesting to see how apparently the whole collective unconscious is waiting for this miracle to happen. And, you know, Jung mentions St. Paul talked very briefly about the apokatastasis. I'm not very good at pronunciation, but is the idea that when man is redeemed, all of nature is redeemed. Okay. Well, what does that mean? If you really, what it really means is, you know, that when the ego consciousness, you know, becomes united, and what he calls the unconscious has a great desire to be led with the hope of renewal. And that's what you saw with all those hands. So what is the unconscious waiting for? And what in alchemy, you know, is the anima crying out to come and rescue me, trapped in the mire, and don't judge me because I'm so dark. What all these hands in our collective unconscious are waiting for us to do is to lead with the hope of renewal. Okay. This is individuation. The unconscious is waiting for this. You know, turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon doesn't hear the falcon. The falcon needs to return. And together with the figure of the animus or the anima, the unconscious needs to be led with the hope of renewal. And the hope of renewal is going to be the symbol formation. You know, the redeeming thing is going to be the mystical child is born, or the philosopher's stone is created. But both of those are spring symbols represented by the ram or the bull, and they represent renewal. You know, that's why I say this is just a beautiful, beautiful lecture, and visions. And as Paul thought, so the unconscious still thinks. The unconscious in our patient has aspirations that are shared by the whole collective unconscious, and they're both aroused as if the Indian and the bull are the saviors of both, you know. And anyway, the Indian still has the lead. The Indian and the bull are the redeemer, and there's somewhat, he says, this is just Mithra, is what he says. What saving the unconscious is Mithra, you know, Mithra and the bull, which is exactly the same myth, you know. But he says that there are no Mithra symbols here; it's just an Indian. And he was said later that he was going to check to see if she knew anything about Mithra. So now the vision continues. The Indian and the bull cross a high bridge over a swift mountain stream, and crossing means going over into a new condition, new chapter begins. They turn to the left after crossing the bridge and descend into a wood. And so to the left is always, we know this from our dreams, it's the side of the unconscious, and that means going deeper, descending into a dark wood, another symbol of the unconscious. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Okay, they're going across a stream, means a place to, they're going to a new condition, the bull and the Indian. So far, we've seen only anticipatory things, the egg and the great mother, the germ of wheat and the great mother, the possibility of the mystical child being created. The Indian and the bull go up to the high point, and the collective unconscious believes that they are going to be this symbol to lead those who haven't been led up to this point, who are not differentiated, are still in the unconscious, and need this something to lead, and also this aspect of renewal. So they go across the bridge, turn to the left, go down into the dark wood, descend into the deeper into the unconscious than they were before. And the Indian stops to drink at a spring of water. And there something very important happens. The patient herself appears in the vision for the first time. And so from now on, these visions are not going to, she's not just going to be an onlooker, they become real experiences. And this happens the moment the Indian crosses the stream, goes down the hill into the dark wood, and drinks water. And before he was high up on the rock, but now he descends into deeper layers of the unconscious till he comes to the spring of life. Okay, so he leaves this divine mystery play where she's not in and comes in to her personal unconscious, which is deep in her body. This is what's going to be so beautiful about her images, how it's really a redemption of the body, of her own body. And this is important for us too, So the Indian becomes much more physical, much more real. He leaves this sort of divine, rarefied air and comes down into the dark wood. And that was the key that he inserted into the water. So it's an old symbol. The magic well always has a transforming effect, bestows all kinds of magical qualities on one. Drinking from a certain well, women become pregnant. Symbolism of the well, where the woman of Samaria comes to draw water, where Jesus offered her living water. And in this scene, going down towards the earth, down into the body, and then drinking the water of life, the Indian establishes a moment of communication between the sources of life in her and himself. And so thus, through that magical act, brings her in. And I just wanted to show you a picture quickly of, this is my mother's sister. This is how they got their water. Through a deep well that they put a bucket down, and then they had a counterweight, that would pull the bucket up after it was filled with water. But they didn't have either. My mother, was this was very primitive Iowa farm girl, in the Depression when no one had any money, and they were lucky to have electricity. But anyway, bringing the egg to the mother and also the grain that comes from the earth, now she enters the mystery play. Okay, now she comes in, but she is wearing a veil. She's wearing a veil. And then the Indian lifts the veil from my face, and we gazed at each other. And he gave me water from the spring to drink. So then I followed the Indian, who was still leading the bull, and we came to a medieval town. Okay, so the drinking of the waters transformed the Indian and brought him into connection with her tangible reality. And that this woman comes into the play veiled means she has not seen, and she has not been seen before. She has been unconscious. So this unveiling of her is her birth. In the mysteries, the veilings usually means that the initiate dies, and their unveiling means the resurrection. So lifting her veil here means her resurrection and going into action or having effect. So, and then gazing at each other means they have an effect on each other. There will be a close association from now on with the leading primordial principle, which was embodied in this Indian. And the obvious first purpose of that close union is that she should now acquire the leading function herself. Because the animus should not lead. He's not human enough. She needs to lead. He's only a partial figure, and she deserves to be led by something that is more equivalent to her than the animus. And there'll be a scene later in the visions where she tells this jury of anime, all you do is sit and wait. I'm going on by myself. And that's where it really starts. The visions start to be very transformational. So they go to the medieval town, and there was a big square in the middle of the town. Now this is really crazy. There's a big square in the middle of the town, and a cross was erected there. And we saw a woman who was holding a baby up to the cross. And the Indian just ignored her and kept walking. And the woman with his bow, and the woman in anger threw the baby at the Indian. And instantly, the baby was transformed into two little goats that followed the bull. Okay. Well, they go back, they regress into the Middle Ages. So, but it's not a personal regression. It's a unconscious regression, a historical regression into the past of the collective unconscious. They're going to go way back. This is just the first place. And it always takes place where the way ahead is not free, when there is an obstacle from which you recoil. And her object from which she recoils is her intellect. You know, she's a thinking function person. So there's no way ahead with thinking. She needs to go back and touch bottom, you know, and go back to her animal roots, you know. And you know, this guiding principles represented by primordial man and a bull, and which is you know, not exactly ideal at this situation, but it's where she is now. So you would never dream of following a principle like that. It's so untrustworthy. So, but this needs to happen. So our patient regresses into the medieval town. Later, the Indian will die, but it's just indicates the medieval atmosphere, the medieval way of solving a problem. And the Indian seems to say, let's see, here we go. Okay, here we go. There, a child is offered to the cross. The woman offering the child is Mary. Mary is offering her child to the cross. That's who that woman was. And Mary brought forth the child to be sacrificed on the cross. And that whatever is growing in one's mind, reaching out into the future, needs to be sacrificed. That's what Mary is doing, is that which was growing in one's mind and reaching out to the future needs to be sacrificed. Therefore, there's no progress. Progress is always difficult. This is just for her. Now, this is not saying that's what Christianity is about. So the future of the child was to be sacrificed to the cross. So everything that was meaningful is in the past. Paradise, the golden age. The only thing ahead of Christiana Morgan is the last judgment, you know, the cross. For this, there's nothing ahead. That's not rebirth or resurrection for her, you know, and we'll see that in a second. For this world, there was nothing ahead. The idea of any real improvement did not exist. Improvement was somewhere else. So the patient shows herself to be a real medieval woman, and she has been shown what medieval women do. You know, they sacrifice their future to the cross. But the animus is saying, walk on by, you know. So the Indian passes on that thing which is alive in her and gives her guiding principle, cold-bloodedly walks right past the cross, Mary, and the child that's being offered to it. He seems to say, there's nothing for you in that. It won't work. That's what he's telling her. Then as the woman gets angry and throws the child at the Indian, means she offers up the child to that strange new thing instead of the cross. She says, I am this medieval woman. Mary and her are the same woman. Okay, she's Mary. She's the one that's offering the child to the cross. She's saying, there's no future for me. I'm going to sacrifice my future for my child. You know, a lot of women said that instead of going to, this actually happened a lot with women in the 20s and 30s that Jung and all these people worked with. Whenever they come up against a psychological obstacle and it got too hairy, they'd say, well, I'll just have a child, you know, for two. And what Linda fears David, who's going to be mentioned here later, she did a wonderful book on the mystery paintings, the women's mystery paintings in Pompeii. She said what really needed to be born in her is not a physical child, but her own moon child. Moon child, you know, needed to be born in her. So anyway, she gets angry, throws the child at the Indian, and says, I am this medieval woman, and I offered my child to the cross. But since you just went on past me like this, I thought you'd stop and help me. Well, damn it all, here it is. Take it with you. So she rebels against that new thing in her, which was so disrespectful and disregarding of her medieval Christian intention, which was linked to the lack of feeling function that she has, that her animus is a little bit unimaginative. So then that's why she needs the primordial in. Then instantly the child, the future, transform and takes on an entirely new aspect. It is just the two goats. So I'm going to have to go a little faster here, but now one thing that's really interesting, and this we can all apply this to our own dream analysis, is Jung says that when you have two goats, there are two things that are alike in a vision or a dream. This is the indication of a very unconscious condition. In the unconscious, everything is in pairs, but usually of opposites, the yay and the nay, or the black and the white. But farther away from consciousness, you can't really say what they are, and then they tend to be identical. So if you have two things that are identical in a dream, it means they're very unconscious. So this would point out it's still a beginning for her, and she is the goat. Okay, she is the goat, and the bull and the goat belong to Dionysian mythology, and she made a picture in which these animals occur. You know, these half animal, half man figures like mermaids, water pixies, Pan, satyrs. There's this wonderful image where this woman in her dream, she would be a fish depending on whatever the cycle of the moon was. At a full moon, she's completely human. But then when it goes into the darkness, she's completely a fish. And then her fish skin keeps going down until the full moon again. You know, so it's this aspect of how important the animal is in our individuation can't be emphasized enough. You know, the extraordinary experience is really the purpose of going into the unconscious. And that's what all the old mystery teachings were saying, was that you need to link with the you need to know what you are rather than who you are. The old religions, the gods were always had a theromorphic aspect, something that was related to the animals. Chernunos had antler horns, and Wotan always carried the ravens with him, and they're just this aspect that they had animal helpers. They were either animals themselves, and I don't know if you ever saw the shaman of Les Trois Frères. He's a bull. He's a goat with bull's legs or something like that. So this now here's a really interesting thing. So then the baby is transformed into little goats, and as soon as she can avoid, she cannot avoid becoming the goat, and they as the goat and the Indian are leaving, at that moment, Christiana Morgan sees Christ in a white robe holding a staff, and behind his head was a halo. She immediately stops and kneels down before him. But as she did so, she saw the Indian with his animal cortege just moving ahead again. So she leaves Christ and follows the Indian. She's following her instincts and not this spiritual, overly spiritual aspect in her, So the Indian pays no attention to the woman and the cross. Let's see. Yeah, this is the same idea. There was, let's see. She just instinctively follows the Indian and leaves the figure of Christ. There's no choice. She just, she's the goat. She's become, he's the actual shepherd, and she's the goat. Now this will change soon, but right now, that's what she needs. So again, there's one other thing here that I wanted to mention, that they are, let's see, 1, 2, 3 things. Okay, they come to a great castle with a high tower, and the Indian calls out, and from a window in the castle, a woman throws a scarlet flower to him, and then suddenly an ostrich appears and joins the other animals. An ostrich appears. And then slowly through Rome and past Grecian temples, they walk with their animals. So they're coming to Jung says the fact that there's a castle there means that she's establishing a stable position in the unconscious. So this would, in the conjunctios, it'd be like maybe the second or third conjunctio. She's finding a spot there, and yet she throws a scarlet flower to the Indian. This is her in the castle, so it means she's no longer related to him just as a goat and a shepherd. She is also accepting him as a lover. Yet the ostrich puts his head. The ostrich comes along. What's he doing there? Well, he's the one who puts his head in the sand when he doesn't want to see his persecutor. So since the ostrich is herself, it shows her that that she is putting her head in the sand about her goat nature, and the fact that she's afraid, which is quite understandable, that of all of this happening. And so they go to the Greek temples, and now this is the image we'll finish with here, but it's just a beautiful image. She beholds a face with the eyes closed, and she beseeches the face, open your eyes and look into my eyes that I may behold them. Now she drew a picture of this. And let's see. Right here it is. She actually says besought, but I wasn't sure what that meant, so I had to look it up. It's beseech. She beseeches, that's him, to open his eyes. And but then the face became very dark, and slowly I beheld what no man is meant to see. He opens his eyes, and there were eyes full of beauty and woe and light, and I could bear it no longer. Now, this actually happened to me. You know, I saw one time the face of the Great Mother, but her eyes were closed. And I asked her to open her eyes, and she did. Immediately, I just woke up. The vision was over. I mean, I was so startled, and actually so feeling of unworthiness to look into those eyes. You know, it was just very startling. And I still, to look into the eyes of the Great Mother, you know, I don't mind looking into the eyes of the anima, but not to the Great Mother. So this is the first vision where she's quite stung. And she's been more or less just sightseeing up till now. Yet she travels through Rome, through the medieval town, through Rome, through Greece, and now she goes even back farther to the animal age. And and this was real purpose of the Dionysian mysteries, was to bring people back to the animal, and not what is commonly understood by that word, but to the animal within. And she looks directly into the eyes of the animal, and they are full of woe and beauty. This is an interesting image for the animal, too, that the eyes full of woe and beauty, because they contain the truth of life. So it's an equal sum of pain and pleasure, the capacity for joy and the capacity for suffering. The eyes of the primordial and the unconscious have a strange expression of the mental state before ego consciousness. And one does not know exactly what it is. And it's bewildering, but it's she sees into the very soul of the animal. And this is exactly the experience that she should have, because otherwise she's disconnected from nature. So this is the experience everyone should have in order to find that connection with nature within, with one's own nature and with the God of the primordial. One could say they are the eyes of the beginning. The beginning was also unconscious, because in the beginning all was unconscious. One cannot know what it is in itself. The animal does not have ego consciousness. It is exactly what we call the unconscious. So anyway, that's kind of there's going to be a couple more visions, but next week I thought we would start with the Puer Aeternus, but just for a couple weeks. But anyway, let's just open it up to comments about anything. And then at the top of the hour, we're going to just turn it over to Jordy. Gary, do you have any comments about anything?
Yeah, just on what you were just talking about there. You know, the purpose was to bring people back to the animal within, and this in order to find nature within. And that's because it's the unconscious part of us. That's the idea.
Well, I think the idea is that we are very we're civilized people, and we are we're very alienated from the fact that that was what I was saying at the start of this. I had this when I go into the visions. I just was in a very maybe it wasn't a good time to do active imagination, but in every case I felt this nagging, Craig, what in the are you doing here? And then I would ask the character, could you tell me about what is real about yourself? You know, and that's when she says, do you have any idea where you came from? Do you have any idea where this body came from? Your 2 legs and your 10 fingers and your 10 toes and your 2 eyes and all that. Where did that come from? Who do you think, who brought that into being? Who are you? What do you think reality is? You know, is it this rat-a-tat-tat thing that goes on up in our heads that's has about this much, it's 10 miles wide and 2 inches deep? Or is it that wisdom that created your body? You know? So when you're trying to link with wisdom, you want to link with the wisdom that created your body, you know? And the only life that we have in this, on this earth anyway, is either plant or animal or I don't know, what do you call the octopuses and the bacteria? And I mean, that's the only life we have, and it's cellular. Okay, so if we want to become whole and we want to link with the wisdom of that of the source, that the source is what created our body. So what do you, Gary? I'm just rambling there. What do you think? I mean, what comments?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I like what you said. You know, I wouldn't disagree with any of that. You know, I was just trying to pull it together. And I guess to me, you know, if we're going to find our nature within, you know, we have to connect to the earth. You know,
I think this is a revelation to me. I mean, it's stated so forcefully in this lecture, and it was also stated forcefully to me when I was doubting who was real and who wasn't real. And they are telling me, you're the one that is ethereal and ephemeral, not us. Who's knock on your body? Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I just wanted to add to that. It makes me think of the history of the missionary zeal of Christianity, going off into the world and finding these primitive peoples and saying, well, we're gonna civilize you. And what we lost in that process was the great earthly wisdom of the indigenous people, which seems to me a really parallel thing with what we're talking about here. That in the individual case, there's this attitude that the bodily, the earthly, is somehow less wise because it's less cognitive. And what I'm trying to get in touch with is that deep Sophia wisdom of the bodily nature that we are. And this is something I think Christianity just totally misunderstands.
They totally dislink from like the shamanic wisdom of the Javaro Indians or something. You know, I don't know if you ever worked with Michael Harner. I mean, he spent a long time with Javaro Indians, but
no, I don't
well, anyway, he teaches shamanic work. He died recently, but I worked with him a couple of times. But the idea was, I was telling somebody who heard of him, they were talking about medicinal herbs and things, you know. And I said, yeah, you know how they found that medicinal herb? No, how did they do it? In their dream, the herb said, come to me. They didn't do it through trial and error. Come to me. You know, the shaman had a vision that told him that was what would heal this. You know, not all of them worked, you know, but some of them did. You know, and I see one time a snake going up a tree out in the park, and everybody's gathering around watching it. And they said, do you know what kind of snake that is? I said, well, it looks like a bull snake. I said, but you know what it's doing? And They said, no. And I said, well, the master snake told that snake that if he goes up in that tree, he might find a nest with some eggs in it, you know, because what would a bull snake be doing up in a tree, you know? But anyway, it's just the wisdom of the Lakota Sioux and all of these indigenous peoples, you know, the ones that in South Africa where they dig up these tubers from deep in the Kalahari Desert and then drink out of them because they store water, you know, and all that stuff. That's wisdom, you know. That's not that. Where did that come from? Well, anyway, yeah. Marina, do you have any thing to say? Did you have a good week, or do you have any marvelous revelations from this week?
No revelations, but I mean, it resonates with me. I've always felt that, very connected to the earth. My ancestors are, very close to the earth. We had, my mother used to get water from the well.
It's very mysterious. You looked in a well before?
Yeah, deep.
Yeah, but especially when they would put when you actually had to leave it open, you didn't have a pump that would pull it out. You had to.
No, that's right.
Put the thing down there. That's very. What's
bucket
down
and
there?
a rope.
Yeah. It's very mysterious.
Very, very close to the animal world. I feel that we are animals. But, yeah,
Don't you
so
feel?
it's
I
just-
mean, I just saying myself. I feel some cellular healing from talk of this nature. You know, I really do. Carlos, did you have anything that you wanted to say or not? You don't have to. You don't want to.
Yes, I was thinking of Castaneda, Carlos Castaneda.
Yes, Carlos Castaneda. Yes, and Don Juan and
Shaman,
yeah.
Don Juan Matus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a wisdom which, now people walking around in white lab coats and, I don't know. I mean, it's very powerful, the intellect. Yeah, but where's the feeling function? Where's the sensate function? Where's the intuitive function? I mean, you might get a little bit of that in quantum physics, but
I'm remembering a story. I can't remember where I heard this, but of a mariner from the South Pacific somewhere, Indonesia or something like that, South Asia, who was able to lie in the bottom of a boat and find an island 200 miles away, just from the pattern of the waves. So he's using his body in the same way that the modern military uses radar.
wow.
And, the military, it costs billions of dollars to develop this. And the indigenous man with his naked body is able to do it with his sensitivity to the world. And I just believe that this is the kind of wisdom and connection that is available to all of us, but we just have no connection to it. We have lost all of that connection to the ancestors and the earth and the animals that was part of our heritage.
And that knowledge, and you can just imagine yourself in one of those Polynesian boats lying in the bottom, feeling the waves. They also kind of did it, but that I'd never heard that before. But by the formation of a cloud, if they saw a cloud, a certain kind of cloud, they knew that cloud could only be above an island, so then they could fly. But that is so interesting. But the force, the wisdom that told that that clan, that culture about that was the same that told that bull snake to go up the tree. It was the doctor within that told him that. And these visions. I mean, do you think that if you could create this body with these hands, with the beautiful colors that we see with our eyes. And then you have Mozart write some of his things. Now, if there is a wisdom in the universe that can create a Mozart, don't you think they they have no ability to communicate with us? You know, I mean, the only communication we can ever get is go talk to that guy sitting across the room. Otherwise, nothing. We won't know anything. You know, I mean, all our knowledge comes from other people. You know, well, where, you know, how did we come about? And there's no ability of that wisdom that created us to. And who's talking in our dreams? Talking English, by the way, and using you know, very good slang language, and is an incredible punster. You know, I mean, who's doing that? You know, I don't know. But anyway, is anybody got anything else? And then I'll turn it over to Jordy, Angel or Dawn, or you don't have to. But anyway, Jordy, you know, you can just go at her if you are you there? Let's see. Well, he might be just stepped away for a second. But anyway, well, next time, and I don't know if you've got it, but next time we'll talk about the. We'll start. I just thought it would be kind of a variety to read a little bit of Marie-Louise von Franz and one of her really good books, you know, which is Quae Aeternus. And I think we'll learn. We learned a lot from just the last 2 or 3 lectures. I think we learned a lot from the Kundalini Yoga. I learned a lot from that book about that. Who's that guy in France that committed suicide? This is a great book. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jordy. So now we're going to, Jordy. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I am.
You want to do it another day?
No, 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
I think yeah.
Okay, well, go ahead. I'm just going to mute myself then.
No, I need 5 more minutes.
Okay, 5 more minutes. That's fine. Okay, sure. Well, no problem. Take 5 minutes. Okay, well, anyway, I can show you a couple other things I did this week. You know, I don't know. It's how interesting it is, but let's see here. This was a vision I had, which I just very mysterious. I think I might have mentioned. But you know, I was. You know, I just saw my back stand up as if it was like on a surfboard. And then a couple white beluga whales started to jump beside me. And then porpoises and whales started to jump. And then the arm of the anima just pointed in the direction of the whales were going. And this was associated with hexagram 60 in the I Ching, and it was, which means water over the lake. Okay, and that what it says is one who is all over the map is no better than one lost without a map. And I think that has the idea of the anima pointing in, follow the direction of follow the inertia of the unconscious. It's being led by these great beings who reach the surface. They're all going in the same direction, you know, follow them, you know, because you're all over the map. And you're no better than one without a map. Yeah, thank you, Carlos. But anyway, that was and you know, I found too that it's very important, at least myself, you know, before I was going into this vision, you know, and I usually, just to get down into this state, I go through these 7 gates, you know, always turning to the left, going down a set of stairs, taking off article of your persona until you get to the seventh gate, and then you enter through with Inanna. I have her help me. You know, I just, you know, imagine Inanna. But I was at the beginning of the vision, or my active imagination, I was asking, you know, my anima, my soul, the great mother, the great forest, and there's always the woodpecker woman, and to help me. And then I thought, ooh, I better mention Inanna. But the fact that I left her out and wasn't sure if I should mention her made me tear up. You know, I just felt grief that I had slighted her in that way. And I thought it was a great, I mean, the fact that I brought that sort of the, is that what's the second chakra is Manipura. You know, I thought that I brought that emotion into it. The fire really helped. But that was what brought this vision, you know, or this scene. Now, I don't have a lot of scenes like that, but, you know, I did have this other one that was very connected with this one here. I'm not proud of this one. I'm going to redo it, but it was at the end of it, nothing had happened. And I said, okay, I'm leaving. I have to go to work. You sure you don't have anything for me? You know, because it's been pretty boring. Suddenly, this creature with her golden horns jumps over a rock. You know, then there was a woman's hand that a bird lights on her hand, and a great big ball of light forms, and then it flies off. And then there was a picture of the hand holding a cylinder. You know, I mean, I don't know what those mean, but you know, I've been having a few of those. But the thing is, the more you do them, the more they happen. You know, if I had enough time, I'd think I'm doing it about at least 60 minutes a day. You know, if I don't do it, it's not good. I think you need to do it every day, you know, but just, I don't know, you know, the best thing I know to do too is just dialogue. Just go down and ask questions. You know, if nothing happens, just start asking questions, you know, about anything, about, you know, usually about dreams. I had this one dream where the mother, there was a dream that it took 21 years of throwing a constructive figure of the Great Mother into a bowl to form your vessel. And I saw a picture of my vessel, and it had, there was one side of it that the side of the bowl was completely unformed. And the idea was it took 21 years for that to happen, you know, and so, I mean, I'm trying to discuss that dream. I'm going to try to draw that dream too, but anyway. Tim, have you had any interesting visionary experiences that you want to talk about?
Well, just briefly, I had a dream last night that that I found really profound. That is, my muse, there's this moment where the muse is in my bed, and I'm about to get into bed with her, and she jumps out and takes off. And I found myself thinking in the morning, I wonder if at the end of a person's life, the last dream they have is their anima or their animus inviting them to make love. And that's sort of the culmination of individuation. And I feel like I have a long way to go, but I've never gotten that invitation before. It was really remarkable.
Yeah, it is. You know, Jung's two last dreams. One was just a picture of a big rock, well, 3 of them. He saw the finished Bollingen. Then he had a great big rock, a round rock. This will be a sign unto you of wholeness and completeness. And then the one that was his very, very last dream was he saw a wolverine mother down at the river teaching her kits, or whatever they call them, how to swim, you know. And Marie-Louise von Franz thought that meant that he knew, or the unconscious knew that he was going to have to learn a different way of acting. But, you know, they say, you know, Marie-Louise von Franz does a book on death dreams, you know, and they tend, most people, the dream maker doesn't really seem to care that the body is dying. You know, usually it only will step in if there's a great resistance to death. You know, if you are absolutely scared to, horribly frightened by the fact of dying, that sometimes the dreams will say something. But if you're accepting of it, they don't really say anything, because they know that they're going to go on, you know. And I don't know, you know, I don't know about you guys, but in my life, there's been all kinds of evidence that the soul survives death. You know, one was my wife's sister died on February 29th, 1976. And she was one of the most amazing people that ever lived. That's what her brother said, who was 4 years older than her. He said, how would you like it if your mentor was your sister who was 4 years younger than you? You know, and she just was a wonderful artist, a wonderful musician, and she was absolutely ravishingly beautiful, you know. And I've got some videos of her singing on YouTube, but I knew one of her friends that was in high school, and I said, well, what was it like being with Heidi? You know, her name was Heidi Burkle. And he says, well, it was kind of fun, because whenever you walked into a room, she'd just suck up all the oxygen and nobody knew you were there, you know. And anyway, I'll tell this story real quick, that our 3-year-old grandson and his mother and my wife were there sitting there wrapping Christmas presents. And suddenly Max says to my wife, she says, you know, your sister misses you very much. And how do you know that she had a sister? And then I kind of pump him, and he says, I said, did she say anything else? And he says that yes, she was going to go to a wedding and she missed it. Well, that's exactly what kind of precipitated her taking too many drugs or something. And then we had this, my wife had a dream where she was talking in the dream. You know, no, she was talking in her sleep. And I next morning I ran down to tell her, and she's running to me to tell her her dream. And what I heard her say was, ha ha, I've only been on a hiatus. And then she was telling me Heidi told her that in the dream. But anyway, I've got other ghost stories. Jordy, it's all yours. I'm going to mute.
Do you listen me well?
I can hear you very well, yes.
Okay, I have a little PowerPoint presentation. Now, several disclaimers to begin with. I am going to be out next Wednesday for 10 days in a meditation retreat. So last minute chores are piling up overwhelmingly. We are in the middle of a pandemic. I work in the Ministry of Health. And as they say in aviation, crap happens. So you heard the, well.
Snafu.
This is it. Now, I gather that what I am going to talk will be of interest to all of you, but not central interest, will be periphery. As you Americans say, There are things which are must have, some are should have, and some are nice to have. I am afraid I fall in the third category. So I'll try to make the whole story short and interesting. Okay? Now, can I have the control of the... May I have the control to make a presentation?
Yeah. Do you know how to do that, Gary? What do I do?
There should be,
You surrender the control.
well,
Okay, well,
I think
yeah, but how
it
do I?
has it. I think it's just go to share screen.
Just go to share screen?
Yeah, Jordy, I think Jordy should be able to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, you should just go to share screen, Jordan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You see where it is?
Yes. Oops.
Yeah, I can see the presentation there.
Yeah, I am trying to activate the thing. No.
You can put it in play mode and it'll be full screen maybe.
Yeah, I am trying to activate the play mode, which appears. No.
Go, can't you just go through each one of the slides by like collecting on number 2 or?
To play the whole thing and not
Okay, yeah, I don't know anything about
control
that program.
5. Now.
There you go. Good
Yeah,
job.
that works.
Okay, you said the world according to Jordi, which goes after a famous novel by John Irving from '78, The World According to Garp, which, by the way, was one of the first books given to me by a woman while I was dating in the States, and just for the record, okay? Now, the topics I want to put on the table, to throw on the table, are the shadow issues, the quadrant approach of Robert Johnson and Douglas Gillette, and then voice dialogue, which is a development done in somewhere in California by 2 students of Jung, Hal and Cedar Stone, which has a derivation on meditation, and then a final comment on intuition. Oops. Now, the shadow, which is something I know it is of your interest, first, it will be interesting to recap the role on accessing the shadow in the personal development, and to which extent we can access the shadow by ourselves, or we need some sort of the presence of other people to do so. It's not easy to access the shadow. Some people argue that you need the presence of others to integrate it properly. Other people argue that it's some sort of a step, a crucial step in the individuation, if that's in an initiatory process. Initiation, you're familiar with the word. It's a word which often, it's confounding, often has a dimension of obscurity, of mystery, of sect, etc. There is an anthropology of initiation. There are a couple of really good books I don't want to distract here. And the traditional anthropology of initiation, and you knew that, has about 3 steps: to retire from normal life and normal society and normal interactions, the fellow to be initiated, to be in a liminal state, where liminal state, you know the term, and then to be back to society. Now, some groups do that, like Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and other, say, esoteric, spiritualist, somewhat fringe movements. And in the 90s, this term was incorporated by the men's movement. You are familiar of the concept, sounds like old, very 90, particularly the flavor, because it came in several flavors, nothing to do with the new manhood of today. The flavor of mythopoietic movement. I'll mention that in a moment. Now, I don't recall where I read it, but it made me a clear impact that initiation on Jungian terms has basically not two steps, two thresholds. The first one is to meet the shadow, and the second one is to confront the anima or the animus at someone which abducts you. But you have to deal with the shadow. To deal with the shadow, your shadow, what's the shadow? Do we have a clear understanding, a clear definition of what the shadow, or it's an idea which better left in a level between intuition and notion? Because if we try to go deeper there, not everybody is speaking about the same thing. I'll make the case slightly later. Now, ways to meet the shadow. We can do a little of experiment here, because the shadow has to do with your persona and you through yourself, and how you build your own persona, your own identity, not your mask, including the satisfactory part of that, and the limit of that will be the narcissism, being completely pleased with oneself and all my toys and Porsche and everything, or how beautiful were the jeans of my mother, or whatever, which is okay. But and we relate through the persona. Now, going back to the presentation. No. Now, going to the terminology matters. The words concerning shadow have to do with ego. Ego has a bad feeling, has a bad mouth savior. In German is Ich, which was translated as ego by the very cultist translators, first of Freud and then of Jung. Bruno Bettelheim, you may be familiar with him, made the point and the implication of that. Now, words have some sort of taste or have some sort of feeling. So when you say something, points to other words with the same, other meanings with the same word, that's called polysemy, but evokes other things. Those things at this point can be problematic. Now, if we do the construction of meaning, we are familiar operation at the definition level. Now, I will argue that it makes sense to work at 4 different levels. For instance, in a lighter side, you are chatting with a woman. In my case, I am a single and I do that or did that occasionally. And in the chat say, well, what's your plans for next weekend? Well, I have some plans. And what's the general idea? My general idea is to have some fun. Answer, define fun. got that, define anger, define, it's not that simple. If we go to the tradition of Western thought, which is ours, and it's possibly the only thought that examined himself in the tradition, in the quest for wisdom, etc. And we look at the Encyclopedia Britannica, there are two, not sometimes conflicting, sometimes overlapping traditions, the idealism and the realism. That is Plato versus Aristotle. Or if you want, Aristotle, Descartes, science, where concepts, notions are given and understood or not. Now, sometimes to make meaning concepts, etc., the thing becomes over and over complicated, generating categories. And then this English friar Wilhelm of Ockham, or Guillaume d'Occam, invented the Occam razor. Occam razor, define fun. You get stabbed with the Occam razor. Now, engineering, medicine, and generally the progress of knowledge, it's to make as close as possible concepts and definitions. And in this sense, physics in the last century and a half has done a magnificent work. Energy, which was some sort of intuition, quite vague, has become nuts and bolts of engineers. Energy, or mass, or substance, or essence, or whatever. But the general idea, I am meaning now and here for all of us, of what comes first, reality or the ideas, it's something it's not possible to solve. For instance, divine versus God. It can be argued that we have a built-in ability to understand divine. But in many traditions, to transform this inner, say, ability to understand, put a word that means make some sort of appropriation and give it some sense and say God, it's short of blasphemy. But we are talking still in the things we can talk about, the things we can articulate with words, rationally, in some sort of a structured logic. But there is a point where logic doesn't work, which is in poetry. And there is an ultimate truth in poetry. I'm not talking about narratives. I am not talking about plots. I'm not talking about TV series where there is character development. I am talking about this sort of potato salad where you have potatoes, some sort of sauce, some sort of other things, where the sum is plus the addition of the parts. In the epic, if you want the mythic level. There is a wonderful book, if you have time and taste for that, I recommend, which is called The Quest for Wisdom, from Alan Bloom. And he confronts Plato with Homer. And it's clear in one of the latest dialogues of Plato, he makes a diatribe against Homer because Homer gets things that Plato cannot define concerning heroism and existentialism. Now, Plato was a poet as well. So he was aware that he was getting things in one level he cannot handle as a philosopher. Now, my suggestion is to take the point, move on, but have some respect and some humbleness here. And again, revisit mythology with different eyes. Okay, back to the presentation. Here we are. Ontology can be a slightly pedant or preposterous word, but there is an order of meaning from definition to the poetry of we cannot speak and some levels in between. That's just to give some sense of order. That's the book of Harold Bloom I recommend, particularly this chapter. You know, he likes particularly Shakespeare and Cervantes precisely for that, because he found in them qualities beyond the plot, narrative, character development, and so forth. Now, I want to talk back to the 90s. Back to the 90s mythopoietic men's movement. I want one particular fellow, which name is Robert Johnson, who committed suicide and died a few years ago. He was professor in the theological seminary, some sort of Protestant in Chicago, professor of psychology. He made a reputation for himself in the 4 series of the archetype within. He developed a four element archetypes that he called themselves quadrants: the king quadrant, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. In the sense of organizing different, say, assortment of archetypes in 4 quadrants. He worked intensively, and I think that's remarkable, collecting fairy tales on one side and a spoken tradition of North American natives with a fellow named Douglas Gillette, which was a field ethnologist, and he produced 4 books which are quite readable and quite interesting, called The Warrior Within, Magician, Lover, and King. They're thick books out of print. And again, to the point, he was one of the founders, or strongly involved with the Mankind Project. Mankind Project was an organization which has its peak in the late 90s, and it involved some remarkable people inside or in the periphery. You may, Sam King, you may know about him. He was the editor of Psychology Today. Asa Weber was a columnist, I think, of the Playboy magazine. He was kind of punchy, a former recon Marine. Robert Bly, of course. This book I recommend, Iron John, which is a Grimm's Brother fairy tale reinterpreted in a Campbellian, if you want, Jungian reading. I found it considerable substance. And David Data, who is does a combination of masculinity and Zen. Now, Johnson quadrants organized in the king quadrant and the warrior quadrant. And to access to the king, so to speak, is the destiny, the queen or queen of the proper human being. And you have to deal with some sort of emotional development. And the entry for male, the entry point is the warrior quadrant, goes from here. I don't know if you see the cursor from here to here. And from females will be from the lover to the king. The king is court, its goal, its order, its meaning, and its things working properly. And and that's a pertinent point on shadow. The path of the warrior, the inner and the final warrior, have 2 extremes, the sadist and the masochist. Below, the coward and the bully. The things can be pretty complex, and it has been found fascinating by many people. Some people say, well, it's okay, it's useful, some people say it's actionable, it's good for organization, it supplies meaning, but it's not that deep from the psychological point of view. I advance, I support this type of criticism. It can be practical in some contexts. Let's put that way, it supplies food for thought at that level. He makes a correlate of emotions and the tempering of emotions with the quadrant. Now, organize, say, subtle and multi-level elements like archetypes and archetypical images in quadrants is the type of thing which love, I'm going to be sarcastic and offensive. That's a warning. It's the type of thing that MBAs love. To make 2x2 tables, but well, it has a knack. It's kind of practical. In terms of emotional dimensions, saying the chore of the warrior is to manage anger, to drive energy of anger. For these people, there are 4 basic emotions, which will be fear, anger, or aggressive response, sadness or loss, and then a general joy or glory. Glory is a religious word which I do like. Can be distracted. Say joy. The joy will be in the king's quadrant. Now, fear is the downside of the magician, the inventor, Merlin, the shaman, someone who lives apart and needs a particular energy, some sort of, it has a color code. Say warriors are red, shamans, magicians, etc. are black, king of course is gold, and lover is green. And the shadow side, or the counter emotion for lovers, is sadness. If you think a little bit, it makes sense. I mean, I am simplifying in 5 minutes something that may be up to 800 pages by the original people, and many more for the aficionados. You see, there are plenty of, it has been developed, no? I mean, warrior, clean, detached, sets boundaries, brave, saves higher course, loyal, focus, discipline, integrity, discerning, and alert, what's necessary and more. Say lover, insightful, aware, wise, connected to unseen forces, healer, detached, observer, etc. Now, we mentioned very briefly the warrior axis. We can develop the other quadrants with their shadows. I think this one is better. From the tyrant to the weakling, from the inner tyrant to the prince, etc. And this is explained in some sort of going from the immature childish to mature development. I leave it here. Another development I want to talk, which are 2, is the voice dialogue, originally developed by 2 direct students of Jung, Halstone and his wife, Sidra. Halstone passed away a few days ago, and later developed in a variation of Zen meditation by Merzel. The voice dialogue is built upon some sort of transactional analysis, which is an element of Gestalt, of opening and accessing inner voices which are repressed. It's cumbersome, it's complex, it's something you cannot do it yourself. You have to be in dialogue with some sort of trained therapist. And it goes that way. Say, Nelson, Craig, I want to talk to your controller. Whom I am talking to? And you say, I am talking to Nelson's in third-person controller. Now, me, therapist, Nelson's controller, I ask you permission to access the safeguard keepers. Now, who I'm talking to Nelson's safeguard keepers through your voice. And then when you're in a safe, felt safe sort of atmosphere, we go to deeper things, integrated or else. And then I want to give voice to the misogynist or to the liar, Nelson's liar. Is that Nelson's liar integrated? No, it's not. Now, you who are Nelson's controller, allow that voice to pop out. And surprisingly, if you are in a safe, protected environment, that opens and that happens. And there are voices, and you can play with all gamut of voices, like a little theater. You can imagine there is experience of what works and what not in the context of therapy. Just mentioning, I don't want to get distracted, but these people, at some point, the Stones from the Jungian Center of Los Angeles were hired by the prior of the main Zen temple there, because in the 70s, the Zen community had plenty of issues. Plenty of issues being panic, hysteria, and sleeping around, as they happen in most religions. And a good student of that, an observer, was a young monk named Genpo Merzel, because they made the point that all monks had to go through some sort of therapy on observation. And it was a Zen temple. They were, say, hardcore Buddhists. And this Merzel developed that as a meditation technique of opening to the world. And I have first-hand experience on that, and I do recommend if anyone is interested in Buddhist meditation. Again, it's a type of thing you cannot do it yourself. You have to do with someone trained, because it has some sort of almost surgical or medical aspect. When you give voices to things which you don't have integrated, you give away a lot of weight. You are quite lighter. It's kind of a balloon. And then if you navigate that with someone who is able to navigate that in a meditative state, in a session of one morning, you can go for a few minutes in a deepness that takes months of years of training. But it's not the typical meditation that you do by yourself, like Vipassana or Zen. It's in the context of a dialogue and for a little while. But all people who have experienced that, the experience is remarkable. I have the feeling I am going too fast. I don't know if I'm conveying some sort of meaning. Again, my agenda was to put on your table some materials for your considerations, no more than that. And I'm going to the last one, which is just a fellow who never was well known, named Gendlin, was a Rogerian, say a psychology of the person type of approach in Chicago. He was an immigrant from Germany, and he had an experience of self-protecting intuition. To make the story short, when he was 12 years old or something like that, escaping from Germany, they were in the Netherlands trying to book a ship to the States or something. And his father, he was with his father, he said, let's escape from here, they are going to cheat us. And how's that? Well, I had a gut feeling. And then when Gendlin was a professor in the University of Chicago, remember that and develop this gut feeling thing. Again, it's quite a cumbersome technique. It's connecting with the body, it's verbalizing, developing something called the felt sense. I have the scheme in Spanish, but it's in English as well. And listening that the part of the body has to say. In my experience, works not that well, takes a lot of training. It's something that at some point some Jesuits were quite interested. As an example of, say, non-articulate development of intuition, for if anyone is curious. Now, back to the shadow. I am not encouraging here to do an experiment, but a classical way of handling that shadow issues, for instance, in the context of the Mankind Project or these sort of main groups, will be in public, ask someone saying, cry. Let's work together. And you tell me, what do you like about me? So, I like you, blah, blah, A, B, C. And then you repeat, and then you take a mirror and speaking to the mirror, to your face, you tell that to yourself. That's the appetizer, because then you say, now you tell me what do you don't like about me. In public, in a circle of people. Well, you are a jerk, you are an asshole, you are a cheat, you blah, 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 blah. And then you talk that to yourself. In my experience, I went, not big deal, but it works. It insights. It's more insightful when you see other people doing that than when you do that yourself. Because by vibration. Again, the shadow, you'll never see your back, you'll see it projected somewhere. Now, in my experience as a crypto Buddhist, unless you take patience and face your shadow, you won't get along with the rest of the world. Somehow, but again, what shadow? How we define shadow? The definition of the short example of Johnson will be an acceptable definition of shadow. To many of us, not. Say the warrior shadow. What are we talking about? So, I think I'll leave it here. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Jordy. And, you know, maybe we can discuss those books. Oh, wait, am I muted?
No, I can hear you.
Okay. And yeah, one that you really, really like, you know, maybe we can look at it a little closer, but thank you very much. So sorry that you had to start a little late. I hope everything went well. Anyway, and next time I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what's going on in Spain too, because it's kind of crazy, isn't it?
Well,
the political situation. Yeah.
The political situation is that we have a coalition government and the opposition wants to throw the what from day zero.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe next week you could tell us. We went over a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll let everybody go.
I'll be out until the 15th.
Oh yeah, you're going to be gone next week, but yeah, I would like you to update us on what's going on.
I'm interested in what's going on the next 2 Sundays.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's just going to be, we're going to go on the Pueri Turnus for 2 weeks, and then we'll go back to the visions.
Yeah, that's a subject which interests me most. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody will enjoy it. It's two wonderful books that Von Franz goes over. The Little Prince, if you never read it, it's fabulous. And then the Kingdom Without Space, which I know you didn't read because it's been out of print since 1906. So, and it's in German. So anyway,
which one? The Saint-Exupéry or which one?
Well, it's called the Puer Aeternus. I'll put the link in the email again. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Jordy, and
Yeah,
thank
thanks,
you, everybody.
Jordy. That was really great.
Very good.
Lot to chew on there.
Yes, and Gary and Marina and Carlos and Dawn and Angel. Thank you so much for hanging in there.
If I have to recommend a single book of the ones I mentioned, I will recommend Robert Bly, Iron John.
Oh yes, that is. I would say that would anybody will like that one. Yeah. The fairy tale is very good too.
The fairy tale and the reading he has is sharp and brilliant occasionally, and well written.
Yes, very well, by a poet too. So anyway, well, thank you everyone, and we'll hopefully have Jan back next time, and we'll see y'all next week. Okay, thank you. Bye now.